So my hobby job, which is what I kind of called it, came to an end. I was in the middle of a divorce and a financial crisis myself with my ex-husband and with 4 kids that all depended on me as the breadwinner and the mother and the father, and in a recession with my industry completely tanking.
In this episode of the Nailed It podcast, we sit down with Johnna Martin to talk about resilience, rediscovery, and success. From navigating life as a single mom of 4 to finding herself again through her passion for interior design, Johnna's story keeps you on the edge of your seat and leaves you inspired. Today, she and her business partner lead one of the most successful interior design firms in Salt Lake Valley. Join us as we dive into Johnna's incredible story, the lessons she's learned, and the drive behind her success. Don't forget to follow us and let us know your favorite moment in the comments. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us kind of how you got to this point in your career. What are some of the things that you love about what you do? And just, shed some light on us and share some of your insight. And, obviously I know single mother, dancing around through careers, and maybe just kind of dive in and we'll let you run with it.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. Feels pretty special to be here. And I've always loved working with you, Brandon. I think personally and professionally, it's always been a good experience. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I have like this history that was never planned. I think most people have a life that's uncharted. I feel like I had a plan, and my plan was pretty on track until 33 years old. So I had it all slated and I got exactly what I wanted. I went to college, graduated from college, which was actually not intended. I didn't think I'd finish, but I did. I wanted to get married. I wanted 4 children. I wanted 3 boys and a girl. And all of that happened. It just all fell into place. And then life caught me, and turned it upside down for me in my mid-30s. And at that point, career, my number one priority was to be a mom. It's always what I wanted. I came from divorced parents, and super sensitive topic for me because all I wanted was what I didn't have as a child. Yeah. And so I set out for that, and then life just happened. And so I found myself 35 and divorced and with 4 children, and no support physically or financially. And leading up to that point, I had 4 children, like I said, all through my 20s. And I found
so
that
children are young at this point.
Yeah, I was pretty young. I mean, I was like a child raising children. I look back now, just laugh at myself because I did not know what I was doing. But I always felt like I just feel good when I'm being creative. And I found myself in my home, looking around and seeing how I could make it better and aesthetically more pleasing. And I grew up in a home where my mother was very neat and she was very creative, and our homes always looked like impeccable. And so I grew up with that, and I can remember when I was married. I was married at 19, and I remember I'd finished college about when I was 21, and we moved into our first home. I was lucky enough to be able to have a home right out of college. And I can remember daydreaming, like literally daydreaming of what I was going to put in that house. And I had gone to this furniture store with my mother-in-law, and I found this seafoam green sofa, and I literally would dream about it. And I had this vivid dream of like walking in, and then I had the car seat on my arm, and then there was my sofa. And I mean, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was obsessed. And I think it kind of just played out because I spent, my free time I learned how to sew. I sewed all my own drapes throughout the whole house. I painted every wall. And this was back in the faux painting days. I faux painted.
Nice.
I mean, I did floral arrangements. I mean, if it was going to make my house pretty, I did it. And obviously didn't have a lot in the budget, so I just made it happen. So I had done that enough where my friends started seeing that my house had an elevated look. And so it was probably when I was about 28, I was always helping friends do their homes. Yeah. And then I remember it was a friend of a friend that called me. And I thought, you know what? I'm not doing friends of friends. Like, I'm going to monetize this. Like, yeah. I feel like I know enough what I'm doing. If someone wants to pay me, then that legitimizes it for me. And so sure enough, she did. And I kind of just jumped in, and my name back then was Tassels Fine Interiors. This was like in the early 2000s.
Ooh, Tassels. I love tassels.
Tassels Fine, because I love to tassel. I'm like old world. I'm very European, old, like tradition at heart. So like when that vibe was in and that whole, old world thing, I owned it. So anyways, tassels. And so I started and I monetized it. I went and got a business license, and then I lived in Northern California at the time. So I went and registered at the San Francisco Design Center. Yeah. And that was back in the days where I would have clients and I said, okay, go to Barnes & Noble, rip out, highlight, take a Sharpie and show me what you like. Give me some inspiration. And then we'd hop in the car and go down to the Design Center in San Francisco. And that's how we did it back then. That's how I did it.
Yeah.
And so
there was no Pinterest. There was no Instagram. It was a magazine.
It was a magazine. And then on one hand, it was very limiting, but allowed for actual creativity more than finding a picture now, you love it, and then you do it.
That's exactly what I want. Yeah.
So I thought like it was even back then, for me, I knew what I loved and I could create it, but I ran out of money in a sense. My husband's not going to let me keep redoing things. So yeah. I just felt like I was so like inclined to help other people create their vision. And that's kind of where it all started for me, was the connection between like me and someone else, and then creating something for them gave me this rush of like a connection with that person. And it was the creativity paired with making them happy. It literally like makes me, I don't know, emotional, but that is it for me. That's always been it. And so yeah, that's kind of how I started in this industry. And I did it for fun until life in my mid-30s kind of hit. And that was when 2008, like the whole recession hit. Everybody was out of money.
Yep. Nobody was spending any money.
Nobody was spending money. So my hobby job, which is what I kind of called it, came to an end. I was in the middle of a divorce and a financial crisis myself with my ex-husband and with 4 kids that all depended on me as the breadwinner and the mother and the father, and in a recession with my industry completely tanking.
You got a little emotional there as you were talking about bringing other people's, vision or dream to life. And one of the things I always like to try to convey to subs is this isn't just like a project, right? This is a family room where they're going to celebrate Christmas, right? They might open up a mission calling. They might, celebrate an engagement. There might be a funeral. Like we're creating something that will house someone's life, like right. their life, their emotions, the sadness, the happiness, and everything. And so I think when you kind of take that personal approach and you look at it and you apply, some emotion to it, it brings projects to life. I feel like I can get more out of subcontractors when they stop to kind of like, yeah, okay, this isn't just another shower. This isn't just another family room. This isn't just another kitchen. This is like, I'm creating something magical that a family's going to enjoy. Okay, so you said you were 28 when you started to monetize this.
Yeah, yep.
So you're monetizing it. Was it you were just kind of doing it part-time? Then the divorce starts and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this full time? Or that's kind of like, oh, there was no work, so you were like, oh, I'm going to go bag groceries? Or what did you do at that point?
So good question. So I started off, I'd say more of a hobby-ish type of thing that monetized it, right? Like it was extra money and I got to be creative. And then I started doing a little bit bigger projects. We're still, I kind of squeezed them in. But then there came my first real client.
Okay.
And she's a dear friend. And And she lived in a very like prestigious neighborhood. They were like estates, and it was the neighborhood kind of. I think it must have been in the 90s. It was the neighborhood, and now they were kind of needing remodeling. But it was
still in Northern California.
This is in Northern California. So I went over to her house, and it was huge. It was probably 10,000 square feet, and this is California, so that's a huge house.
That's huge for California.
And I'm just like I'm literally thinking the whole time, there is no way I'm doing this. Like, I wouldn't not know where to start. Like, I can do houses, but this is so out of my like lane here. So anyways, I just was like gracious and talked it through and got home, and I was like, there is no way I'm doing this house. So I called her and I said, it was such a pleasure meeting you, but I'm going to have to decline. I've got my fourth baby. She was 1, and my oldest was 9. And so, I mean, I was quite busy, and I said, I just can't do it. And she tried to talk me out of it, and I was like, no, there's no way. She called me back like 3 times, and she goes, I don't care, I want you. And I'm like, I don't know why you want me, but I kind of love that you do, so I'm in. Okay, I don't know how long this is going to take me. I don't even know how I'm going to do it, but I did it. It took me 1.5 years. It was an amazing project. I'll probably never have one like that again. She was a very humble woman. You would never know, but she wanted bling, and she wanted it to the nines, which was such a juxtaposition from her, how she dressed and her demeanor, and then what she wanted her house to look like. It was very fun. It was great. So that was, I think, my first job of like, how do I organize? How do I actually get everything done in a way that's like, build my subs, like it was everything. Build my contractors, and then align with the subs and communicate with them to make sure we get what we want. And yeah, it was a big deal. And then, to be honest, that project turned into multiple projects in that area. And it got to a point where I called my mom, who lived in Utah, and I said, hey, listen, and she's funny. I'm a lot like my mom. My mom's always doing something, and she's always doing people's homes. And I said, hey, how would you like to work for me? And I said, obviously you're there, but I have like a few projects. I can't do this on my own. I need help. And so my mom actually moved out for 2 years, rented a condo, and we worked together, and we did some really great projects. And so it was fun. And that was, I think, to your point, like I started really understanding like this is a business and less of a hobby. And now this is a business. Yeah. And so that happened, while I was married in that stage. And then, honestly, and then life and the recession hit kind of all at one time. So those projects kind of came to an end, and then mostly my life dictated, because I think I probably would have stuck it out, but life took me out of Northern California down to San Diego, and kids and the recession. And then that's when life like threw me some hard curveballs.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's hard. We had a guest on here who made the comment. He said, for me to start a business, because when he started his business, he was 16, 17, living at home, no rent, no expenses.
No risk.
And he made the comment like, my risk was low. It was easy for me to start something because I had no expense. I had no mortgage. I had no kids I had to pay for. And so as that all is kind of coming to a close, right? And maybe you're thinking like this chapter of my life is closing.
Yeah.
What kind of career path did you look for then? Because I think, as a lot of single mothers that I know, it's like you're cutting your teeth. You're out there just doing whatever you can to make ends meet, and also give you enough freedom to be there for your kids, right? Because you got to raise your kids.
Yeah, it was a complete like nightmare. So to try and be brief, before I left, I thought I had set up a job. I knew that design and the housing industry was not going anywhere. So I had friends, and I decided I can sell. I like people I can sell. I can sell anything. If I believe in it, I'll sell it. And a good friend of mine, he was in medical device sales, spine surgery sales. And we were good friends. He's like, I'm hooking you up. He hooked me up with the regional guy down in San Diego. I had an interview down there. I moved down there. I ended up getting an emergency move away order to be able to take my 4 children and leave, which is like 98% of those get denied. I got one, so I got to leave. But with that was also a whole new wave of like challenges, because I had no friends and family anymore that I
rely
left.
on to help with the kids.
Nobody. So that was a negative, a huge negative. But the positive was I felt like I could give myself and my kids a kind of a clean, fresh start and a healthier ultimately environment for them. So I had set this up. I had even kind of gone there with this idea of medical sales, and it ended up that it went nowhere. It ended up that the guy that had the territory lost the territory, and that meant anybody he wanted to employ, it was just gone. And so I'm left with a job that I thought I had that had a decent future and to nothing. And I hit Craigslist or whatever it is I looked at, the classifieds, and I ended up working at a spa salesperson at La Costa Resort and Spa, beautiful place, for $11 an hour. Ooh. And I have 4 kids at home. My oldest 14, my youngest 7, and I'm making $11 an hour with the hopes of commission. Well, anyways, that path of hustling, it's my hustle period.
Yeah.
I hustled and I worked my way up, but it still wasn't enough money. So then I went cocktail waitressing at night at La Costa so that I could make it up. And then I went to other sales positions. I went to skincare. I went to solar. I went to anything that I could do to make money. Yeah. And any type of environment that I could try and be at home for the kids when I could. But even that, it was very, very rough. But I learned how to hustle, and I definitely learned to appreciate the things that I had always taken for granted.
Yeah.
And it was, I would never trade those years, but it was, like they were tough. Yeah.
I can feel that. So you're kind of down there, you're grinding. How do you segue back into the design field? How do you ultimately end up kind of back here in Utah? Obviously, I know you have a home in California, so you're a little bit back and forth, but how did you segue back and then, land here?
Yeah. Okay. So it's a good question, because I think so much of this industry is creative, right? And to be creative, you have to feel grounded and centered, especially if you're creating for someone else. And for so many years, I had that, we call it the grind period, the hustle period, for 10 years. It was a 10-year stint, and of kind of like chasing anything that would stick to be able to provide and to be a mom that could support my kids. But one thing I noticed for the first 7 years, the thought of being creative actually turned my stomach. The thought of looking at a house magazine like HGTV, I would see that channel and it would create such an unpleasant feeling in me, because it was like a different life.
Yeah.
And so there was almost this inner animosity towards the industry and what it represented to me. It was a different life that was no longer for me. So I didn't have any desire. And then I started, I don't want to say I ever really got my groove during that phase, but I started feeling a little bit better. I had a job at a skincare manufacturer that I liked, that I felt like I could use my skills and talents. I did a lot of marketing and sales for them and just creative work for them. Mm-hmm. And that started feeling like I was myself a little bit again.
Got some of the creativity going again. Yeah.
And almost like, I think I just finally exhaled for like a second.
Yeah.
And at that exhale, I had a girlfriend and she had money that she didn't know what to do with. And she's like, you know what? Let's start a business. Let's start a staging business. And I'm like, I'm down. I'll start a business. Let's do it. So we did. We started a staging business.
For realtors?
For realtors.
Okay.
And I did not want to do that because I I'm like, I've never done that, but I've done people's homes. And so she's like, oh, it'll be great. And I'm like, okay. So we did this staging business and we did it for like 2 years and it was fine. It wasn't, to me, it wasn't being creative. It was just working and it was just a different job and it was fine. But that is what opened my mind up to going, well, I do really love this and I am pretty good at it. And so that kind of like opened the thought process that I could get back in the industry. And then life kind of turned. My third son had left for college and I had just my daughter left at home and I knew change was in my future. I felt like maybe San Diego, I needed it to kind of maybe move. And I had my oldest son was playing football here in Utah and my other kids were coming here for college. And so I took my daughter and I said, let's just move to Utah and let's just feel like we need a change, just us. And we did, and I was dating my now husband, and he was probably the force that said, do what you love.
Yeah.
And I remember when he asked me, he's like, what do you love? And I'm like, I don't even know anymore. Like, I don't know. I don't know. And he was the one who said, well, you should get back into interior design and do it. And you know how immediately when you're not secure and like, I just wasn't secure in who I was because who I thought I was not, you know, didn't really follow suit. And now I was this divorced woman and this single mom, like all these labels that I never really wanted.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that who I am? I didn't really even know. And he encouraged me and I thought, and I'll be honest, it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done was apply for interior design jobs in design firms. I did that here in Utah and that was me taking a complete leap into the unknown and a lot of self-doubt and a lot of inadequacy. And I felt like, why would they want me?
Right.
So I don't think I probably would have done it if I didn't have someone who didn't know the old me say that I think you could, why don't you do it? I just remembered the old me and I'm like, that's not me anymore. And so I did, and I applied for a couple of big firms here in Utah and I ended up working up at Park City with Barclay Butera and they hired me and I was shocked. I'm like, why would they hire me? I don't really understand. There's all these young people coming out of school that and I didn't really understand it. And it's taken me a few years to kind of get back into like feeling secure in this part of me. I think because of those 10 years, I had so many different like jobs that I lost what I was good at. I lost what fed me.
Because it was a job, it was different. It was for money to make ends meet. The picture, you know, I'm a very visual person, and it's like, you know, I think we have like, oh, that's the picture hanging on the wall. That's what I want. Like you said, the 3 boys, 1 girl, you know, and beautiful picture of the family on the beach, and every year, like new picture every year, and so I think it, you know, for me and I know a lot of other people, it's like you have that picture, and when that picture gets blown up into a whole bunch of little pieces, it's kind of like, how am I piecing this back together?
Yeah. And in piecing it back together better. Yeah. And because ultimately all those challenges are to build us, you know, or they can tear us apart. Yeah. And I think I was both. I was stronger in some ways and I was probably less secure in other ways. And I think getting on with a large firm, it did a lot for me. It allowed me to see my strengths in a different light. And professionally, I'd say, like as a mom, like I was pretty secure and I just knew I did my best, you know? Yeah. And, but with work, I was like, well, maybe it was just a fluke, you know, that people like hired me. Maybe it was just a fluke. And it wasn't until I got into an environment of other professionals where I started thinking, oh, I really wish I was more like that. Really wish I was more like that. So on one hand, it kind of made me feel like less, I don't know, secure. But on the other hand, things that came so easy to me, they didn't come easy to them. And so what ended up happening, to kind of just briefly say, is that I got in there. I was clearly a little older than everyone else. And they immediately started putting me on all these 911 jobs where they were going to get
dropping the ball.
Yes, they were not happy clients. And I somehow, it was the perfect fit for me, because to me, it's design comes after I connect with the person. Like I connect with them, and then I feel like I can work for them and design and do the job, right? But it was like, that's not in a large environment, and it's kind of a machine. You probably lose a little bit of that, but that's actually what I love the most. So I kind of got in there and just connected with clients and understood their needs and did what came natural to me, which was connect with them, understand what they wanted, and then do it. And I just started realizing that, why am I fighting? Why am I feeling less secure about myself? Because I'm not as technical as some of these other people. But I finally realized that, like, I don't think everybody has everything. And I think it's an illusion to think that everybody is good at everything.
Especially today.
Right. Yeah. Where you see someone, you're like, they do it all. And it's like, no, they may do it all. But I mean, really, like, they have strengths, you know?
And they also do well, you know, orchestrating other people sometimes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And there's people for that, right? There's people that are really good at that. And some people like just utilize their strengths. And I felt like that firm utilized my strengths out of the gate. And I'm super grateful for that, because I think otherwise, if they would have had me do other things that I'm less inclined to excel at, I think I would have probably crumbled. But because they utilized my gifts, and I was able to see how I could really thrive in this industry again, in an older, more seasoned way. And stop beating myself up that I'm not, you know, coming out of school knowing all the new programs and all these things. That just wasn't my path.
Well, I think, you know, kind of going back to where you got a little emotional, and you're saying, you know, you want to create this vision for other people. That's one of the things I really like and appreciate about you guys is you want to connect. You want to be in the space, you want to look, you want to touch, you want to feel, you want to connect with the people. Because really, you know, if somebody's across the country and I don't really know them, and I'm going to design for them, it becomes more difficult, right? Because as you're trying to get to know them and really deliver the vision that they have, it becomes more difficult. And I think all of your experience that you had, your 10 years of grind, you gained a lot of that skill, right? That skill to, maybe diffuse a situation and connect with a client, as opposed to make excuses or, okay, we're going to do this. It's a lot of times it's just connecting, right? It's being a real person, connecting with a real client, and having them feel like they're being heard, they're being listened to, you're delivering what you want. Yeah. So you and Jeff, you start this company, and you met Jeff at the firm, right?
I met Jeff at the firm, and this was after me being there about a year, and I just realized that they're not probably loving that I'm spending so much time with these clients and not generating more, and I'm just feeling like I can do better. I can do me better on my own. Yeah. And they had an amazing operation and amazing clients and amazing staff. It just wasn't me. I wasn't going to be able to thrive as I could. And so I left, and I am a jumper. I mean, the one thing, I will jump. If I feel inclined, I will jump. And so I jumped, and I'm like, I'm starting my own thing. And I told my husband, I said, I'm going to need really good people. And if I could ever choose a partner, it would be Jeff. And he's everything I'm not. He's technical. He's very mellow. I'm high strung. Like, there's just this yin and yang. And
absolutely.
And I mean, two of me would do this. And so I don't know. I just was like, he's brilliant. He's so talented. And I think our personalities are quite opposite, which is a good thing. And so that was also one of the hardest things I've ever done, is call him up and be like, hey, remember me? I was there for like a minute at the firm.
So you had already left.
I left.
He was still there. You left. You started your own thing.
I started my own thing, and I reached out, and it was just a perfect timing thing for him. And he'd been there for about 10 years. And it started off with, I'm like, I've got projects, and I'm willing to kind of have you do some, side work and just help me out. And so we started that way. And then I just leaped and I said, just come over and I'll make sure that I'll make sure it goes well.
Yeah.
Like I got it. And it's been about 4 years. And so, yeah, it just, and I said, listen, be my partner in this. I need what you've got. And I think we can build something here. And so we have, and I feel like we've built something special and unique. And I'm the first person to say there's so much talent in Utah. There is so much talent. And I respect like this industry and everybody in it. And I just wanted to be able to do what I love and do it with someone that I respect, and we're able to kind of just do it.
Yeah. So we met, around the time that you guys started, or I guess that Jeff came on.
Yeah. So it was like, I think it was about a year into it, and it was during COVID because things kind of slowed down for everybody. Yeah. So I decided to kind of email local, people, industry people, contractors. And
I had a terrible Instagram page at that time. I don't know if that's where you found me, but anyway.
I don't remember where I found you.
I remember getting a phone call and I was like, oh yeah, great, let's do it,
Well, it was so funny because I sent this email and basically I'm like, listen, we do we're good. And literally back to my grind phase. If I believe in it, you can't stop me. And with Jeff as my partner, I was that. For me, I was like, well, I can do this, but I'm not that, I was overthinking it. But with Jeff as my partner, I'm like, oh, we can get it done. And so I sent out to some architects and contractors, this is what we do. And this is how we do a project. And we're good. Yeah. And I actually worked with a few, and you're one of them that it actually, they say
Very
you got
cool.
it with marketing, you got to throw it out every one person out of 100 they might, connect with. But it's been awesome, and you've been one of them. And I remember you when you reached out, you're like, I really appreciate what you provide contractors. And I think that's kind of been the meat of our relationship. It's we really are more than just putting pretty stuff together. We kind of do all the back end stuff to make it easy.
You do. I tell people this. I say, look, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And people, I say, I'll use this analogy with people. I go, you go to buy a car. And you go to the car dealership, spend several hours, you buy a car. What you're not seeing is a 2,000-page spec book, every single part, down to the most minute detail to create that.
Yeah.
I go, and then people hate their contractors, but is a contractor to blame when they say, let's get started? There's no plan, there's no vision, there's no selections, and then they're mad that there's budget overruns because contractors just okay, yeah, let's go. Somebody wants to pay me to do work. I don't know what we're doing, but yeah, we could do that. It should cost about X amount. And it's kind of just a guesstimate, and owners and contractors, I feel, are guilty, both parties, because it's they throw caution to the wind. And I always say, you spend more money on your home than pretty much anything, unless you're buying private jets and yachts. Why not plan? Mm-hmm. Spend some time planning. And I know for me, I always tell people, look, if you're seeing it in a magazine, if it's published, a designer did that. Yeah. I could build a beautiful home, but it's just an empty box at the end, right? And so I loved seeing how you guys I can deliver something and you guys come in and just really bring it to life. And I've learned a ton in working with you guys because from the different layers and the window treatments and just kind of all the little minute details that bring a project to life. And I just really, really appreciate working with you guys and the hands-on approach and how talented you guys are. So,
well, thank you. And honestly, right back at you, because as logical as we would think that all contractors love the detailed drawings and elevations and finish schedules, we have worked with some that don't even access them and don't use them. And so it seems so silly, but that happens a lot. And so when I feel with anyone, I think that's why we've worked so well together and with so many projects, is that when you actually align with how you can create a really good project together, Like, we provide materials, you provide the work, you ask the questions, we answer them. Like, it really is great. That just doesn't happen all the time.
This is true.
So yeah, I mean, I think that those details matter, and it is funny because anything published, in fact, we've got a PR girl that can get us in some publications, and I was talking to her a week or two ago, and she said, I said, we just finished this amazing project, and it was a very expensive project. It was far above and beyond most projects that we'll probably do, and I said, so what do you think about getting this one published? And she said, it's spectacular, it's beautiful, but it's funny. We're looking for more unique layers than that. Like, that's a timeless home. And it was funny because I'm like, yeah, it takes a client and a designer that can do those things that need to be published, right? Like, all those layers that you're talking about, all those details take time. They take design time, they take creativity, and they take money. And they take the right client that's willing to do those. Instead of just something looking gorgeous and timeless and beautiful, it's like that designer, like, next level is like a whole nother level. And you have to have someone that's willing to build it.
For sure. And someone who also can let the designers run a little bit. Right? Like, sometimes I know there was a client you guys were working with, the architect was working with it, and I know they went through numerous contractors, numerous designers, and I think that individual wanted to keep people on such a short leash that it was like, it stunts that creativity. Where it's like, no, this is the box I want you to stay in, and if you deviate from this box, we have problems, right? Right. Because I always say, look, I'm not, you don't want me, I joke with my excavator, I go, you don't want me in your piece of equipment because I'm not good in it, right? And I recognize my strengths and other people's strengths, and I say, I'm not a designer. Like, you don't want me doing your design work. Yeah, I might have some good ideas and thoughts, and if the designers have something, maybe I can provide, a little bit different opinion, but that's not what I do, right? Yeah. Hire the professionals to do that. Right.
Well, and I think it's like, there's value in the design process, and there a lot goes into it. And I think when we have clients that, like, they understand the value in us, right? They know they need a contractor. They know they need someone to build it. But oftentimes people, if they don't really understand all that goes into the finish, like you said, the finished magazine picture, right? The level of detail and specifications and drawings and all of that it took to get to that point, like, that's where we come in. And I think sometimes with Instagram, the Insta perfect, it's like, you jump in a reel and then you jump out and then it's done. Like, it took a year and a half. And I will say this, like, and they let the designer design.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, it's funny, but when you have a client that literally says, you've got my vision, now just run with it, that's when we get the best projects.
They turn you loose. What's maybe one of the biggest mistakes that you see contractors make, and the biggest mistake you see homeowners make? Because I've got an opinion, but I want to hear what your thought is. So biggest mistake that homeowners and contractors make.
I think sometimes homeowners aren't open to a new thought process, right? And a lot of times, like with remodels, they're living in the space. They live in it every day. They've lived in it for 20 years, and they're not thinking outside the box. And they want to stay within the constraints that they see, but they're very limited. And sometimes I think it's a mistake to not be open to suggestions that maybe they haven't thought of.
Yeah. I remember one I think it was probably the first project we did. Afterwards, when we were done, it was up on Skyline, and the husband in the company, he's like, we would have never come up with this layout, with this floor plan, right? And again, they're living in it constantly. Like, and I think people live in a space, they go, oh man, I'll move this, or I'll move that. And they think they've thought of everything. Right. And I always tell clients, they go, oh, well, can we do this? And I always say, we can do anything. Like, literally, we can do just about anything. Right. Now, is it cost prohibitive? Is it something we want to do? Is there enough value in it that we want to do that? That's a different question.
Yeah.
But I agree that, sometimes it's, not opening, the horizon, so to speak, to a broader view.
Yeah, to what's possible. And I think that that's kind of where we come in, right? We're looking at it like this footprint, and then creating like function and everything within that footprint, rather than this room or that room. Like we're looking at it in its entirety. And I mean, it's amazing what you can do with keeping the footprint and redesigning the inside. It can be different. But I think one of the things that I was really thinking, what do contractors, I mean, I'll just say there's a lot there's a lot they can do wrong. And I'd say number one is budget situations. And I love the fact that you do not fall into any of these categories, which is why I think it's such a successful partnership. But when builders come in and throw numbers at a client, that is what they've done in the past as far as just a builder quality standard, and they start throwing numbers at a client with a very standard home that they maybe built once before, and because clients are going to get stuck on that number, and now everything is too expensive. And I think when contractors just throw numbers out there of budget allowances, that could be Home Depot tile, not, a high-end mosaic that the client really is thinking. How does the contractor know what the client has in mind? She might want marble everywhere and inset cabinetry. And he's giving her, very budget prices. And so when a contractor doesn't know what the client wants and he starts giving them allowances, whether they're on paper or verbal, that really kinks up the system, because now we have to work against what their initial thought was and how much things were going to cost that weren't even relevant. They weren't even in the ballpark of what the clients were looking for. Yeah. So I love that you don't do that. And
they win the job. And they win the job because they're the ones that are like, oh, we can do it for this.
Yes. And then it always 100% of the time it is out of budget and everyone's mad at each other. Mm-hmm. And everyone is pointing fingers, and it never happens if you do it right. And doing it right is what we always try and do, which is we literally specify the entire job. Yeah. You bid it out, you give them a budget, and then we can value engineer, and then we can cut some scope out if it's too much money. But they have real numbers and a real scope, and it ends up working out.
It is funny, because we charge a pre-construction because we put a lot of time into it. And I always tell people, we don't want a client who wants to be told something that isn't real. If you want to be told that it's going to cost X amount, and we know that it's going to cost way more than that, and you're fine with that entry number, and you'll just figure it out as you go, I always say, we're not the right contractor for you. We're going to pay us a little bit of money, and we're going to hard bid everything out. There'll be very few allowances. If there's an allowance, it's because something's undecided, or it's maybe a little up in the air, or we priced something out, it was a little too expensive. So we say, okay, hey, we should be able to find something for X amount, and it's kind of a placeholder budget.
Yeah, but you already have, at that point, those placeholders, you already know what price point you're in.
Exactly.
You may not know the color, but those are actually even more accurate than most people's allowances at that point.
'Cause I'm just not a fan of allowances. And I say, look, the reason we do this is because we want to be on talking terms at the end of the job. Yeah. Right? You've heard all the horror stories. People hit their contractors. And I always say, look, it's a two-way street to clients, right? It's a two-way street. Clients want to start. Contractor says yes. Contractor gives them a bogus budget. Yeah. Because he did a project similar, but it was all cheap finishes, right? To your point. What do you think is maybe something in your career where it was like a pivotal point? Obviously, I know it was, you went to work with Barclay. I said Barclay. There you go. I knew I said it wrong. You went to work with Barclay. You were there a year. Maybe it was some time in between there. Maybe it was during the grind. What do you think maybe has kind of got you to the current position you're at as a tremendous designer? I mean, I think you and Jeff are top notch. don't think there's another designer that I know of that I worked with that can hold a stick to you guys.
Oh,
but
that's so nice. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Anything maybe pivotal that jumps out to you over the last decade or so?
I had two thoughts. The first thought is kind of going back to the grind phase. When you do something for money, it's very transactional and there's not a whole lot of emotion in it. Mm-hmm. When there's not a lot of emotion in it, in my opinion, the creativity suffers. And so if the creativity suffers, the project isn't as good as it can be. And so I feel like in the last couple years, to be totally honest, this need to make money, which we all have that need, but I think I was so traumatized by my phase of life that I had that it became part of me, that trauma of like needing to make money. And I think I treated the job differently than I treat it now, where I viewed it as a means to an end, like a way that I could make money and then, be fine. Instead of, for me, the last couple of years have been a transition in my mind of, I'm so fortunate to be able to have talents and opportunities to connect and create and build a business, build a life, build relationships, live in a community. It's very in sync. And it was very different when I was, trying to find a job, all of that. I was doing it like, can I make money? And so to me, I've always heard this, but it didn't resonate as well. But like, the money will come if you are doing it. Like maybe you won't be rich, but you'll be satisfied. If you're satisfied, you're satisfied. It looks different for everyone. And I just have gotten to a point where I'm like, if we're slow, then we can spend more time. That's a blessing. Yeah. If we're busy, we get to create more. Like I stopped having this view of, oh my gosh, we gotta, or else, and I just stopped and like, gosh, 5 projects would be amazing. We could spend so much time in each one of them. Wow, what we could do, Or like, gosh, we've got 25 on the books right now. All right, we got to hire someone, That's also a great problem. Yeah. So I think the biggest change in me has been viewing what we do and connecting with it personally and feeling present and kind of just blessed.
I think that is one of the things that allows one for better creativity. And you do a better job, right? If you love it, if you enjoy it. And I think it shows up in the work, right? Because I think in this industry, all of us, especially contractors, I don't know specifically for designers, but it's like we're all overworked. There's more work than we can handle. And we want to make everybody happy. And it's hard to say no. And,
it's hard to say no.
And especially when you start to, it's like, oh, I really like these clients, right? Yeah. I want to like help them out. I want them to be happy at the end of the day, right? And how would you define, I think this might segue into what we were talking about, but how would you define success today, and has it changed over the last several years or the last, the course of your life?
Yeah. I think it's just feeling satisfied. And I think I'm starting to actually feel satisfied that life was not like according to my mapped plan. Right. I love to play tennis. So in my brain, it's like, okay, when the kids go to college, I'm gonna play tennis every day and I'm gonna have, lunches with the girls. That is not my life. As much as it sounds amazing, I don't even know if this is what I would have really wanted, but in my brain, that's what I wanted. And so it took me a long time to be like, well, that life wasn't yours, but like you like feel good in where you're at. And so I think success to me is taking pride in what you do and feeling good about what you do and enjoying it at the same time. And I think that's, and it makes me think of like in our industry, a lot of very, I'd say popular or very successful, I should say, design firms have a very distinct look. And I think that's something that where Jeff and I had talked about that. Like, we don't necessarily have a distinct, like one look. Our whole, like a successful project to us is not doing JSTUDIOS. a successful project to us is creating something for a client that is better than they could have imagined, but feels like them. Yeah. And to us, like, that's success. And then having that client feel that way comes back on us, and we view our firm, that project, as a success. When we've built this relationship, we've created for them, and their life has been enhanced by living in a home that feels like them and is beautiful.
And it makes people happy, right? When you're in a good space, it feels good.
Totally.
Right? I was the nerd when I was younger. If I had a big homework assignment, I'd come and organize my room before I do my homework. Even if it was clean or picked, like, if there was anything out of place, I would, because I could function better, work better,
Brain, it's clean, the environment feels safe, and organized. I'm the same.
No, I mean, I think that's a great definition of success, and I've worked with you guys on numerous projects, and I know, I'm thinking of one in particular up off of a Sunset, and I see them regularly. They're clients who've turned into friends. We go to dinner, and they're always just, JSTUDIOS is the best. And they've obviously referred additional work to us. And I think that, plays into your guys' strength of really delivering what emulates who they are, right? As we wrap up here, I think one question I have is, maybe I wanted to touch a little bit on AI and where you think the design industry is going. If you think AI is going to play some role, because as I think about some of these things and AI in construction, I think, AI starts to remove that personal element, right? Mm-hmm. I think if Barclay was, could have turned all of those younglings into AI, and that's all people wanted, then maybe your job they wouldn't have hired you, right? But I think there's kind of that personal element. But what are your thoughts about kind of the direction it's going? Workforce, are there plenty of people in the industry? What kind of tell me your thoughts on the next 3 to 5 years as it evolves?
Yeah, I mean, I'm far from like a technical person. So AI to me, I'm just like, my eyes are still wide open trying to understand it. But ironically, I kind of dabbled in it in the last project, creating I had a client that was very tech savvy, and he created some AI after we had done the design. And it got me wondering, like, well, that's pretty good. So I started, dinking around with it. And I think ultimately, this is my opinion, that AI is another resource to create, like, for people to have visuals, right? Like, it's inspos. Instagram's done that. Pinterest has done that, where now people can have an entire library of their inspirations. Yeah. I think AI, in my opinion, is elevating that. But at the end of the day, what I notice most, we've got a client that we're working with right now. She knows exactly what she likes. She's got the best Pinterest board I've ever seen, right? She's got great taste. But she's coming to us to make sure it's working. How do I blend? How do I marry what I love over here with what I love here? How do I get this look without it feeling so much like this? How do I make this like this for my family? Like, at the end of the day, all of this is amazing inspiration, technically derived for us to like, but we all want reassurance. We're spending millions now on homes. Yeah. And I just don't want to go off of an AI computer who says that looks right. What if it doesn't? And what if it doesn't look like that in person either? And so I just think at the end of the day, people still want the reassurance. They want the guidance. They want the hand-holding. I mean, we finish a project and we're on site a lot at the end, hand-holding, that everything's looking great. I know you don't see it yet. It will. So I just don't think that you can really get it all done without a professional or someone you trust, a person, to kind of bring it all together.
Yeah. Because it's like seeing it in real life versus seeing it through a picture or video, right?
Yeah.
And I know we've had clients, I'm on one side of the phone call and the client's concerned about a tile that was selected, and I'm kind of saying, well, hey, if you don't love it, we can always change it. But I think we stay the course, because if it were me, I mean, I've never seen Jeff and Johnna make an error where like, oh, that's the wrong tile. Can we redo that?
If
right?
we did, we would tell you,
Yeah.
and we would rip it out.
Yeah, exactly.
and we would be on the hook for it, because we would never finish a project that we don't believe in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, that was the message I gave them. And they talked to you, I talked to them, we kind of got them calmed back down, and now they're ecstatic about it, right?
Yeah.
When it's all finished
Yeah.
and it comes to life and there's that full vision, then I think it does make a really big difference to kind of have that all tied together.
Yeah. And I think it's the personal thing, right? There's nothing more personal than your home. Mm-hmm. Your family lives in that, and that's your everything, right? Your home is the closest thing to it's your nest, right? So who doesn't want to feel secure in creating that? And I just don't think you can get that from a computer. No. I just don't. And I've seen plenty of homes that were designed by Pinterest, and they don't really work together. The rooms don't work together. They might be okay on their own, but it's just, and honestly, let's create your own home.
Yeah. Let's make it for you.
Yeah. Let's
not someone else's vision.
Yeah.
So 2 last things. JSTUDIOS, was that the name before Jeff came on? Or is that the name because I think it's great. Question. Jeff, Johnna, there's 2 J,
so that was kind of, no, it was, Johnna Martin is my name. So I did, I started J Martin & Co. was my design name after I left, and created this. And, when Jeff, that's still the parent name.
Okay.
That's still the parent name is J Martin & Co.
I've seen it on
a
few things.
Yep. And we did a DBA of JSTUDIOS.
Okay.
And I wanted Jeff to feel a part, and I wanted him to feel like a partner.
Yeah.
And we're both J's, and it made sense off of J Martin & Co. to just go J. Yeah. That represented both of us. And yeah, it's a team. So JSTUDIOS and team now. So
I love it. I'm going to tell you just a quick funny story. So I have a Finnish carpenter, and he often gets volunteered to meet with these designers, and he has a lot of designers that don't like him. And so he's on this job. It's this multi-million-dollar home, and this designer comes in, because I always say, look, hey, there's like full-fledged true designers, and then there's kind of like your Pinterest designers. They're great at getting pillows and throws for the couch, and maybe assembling some finishes for the room, but they're not providing any drawing, they're not providing any context. So she pulls this picture up and goes, this is what I want. And he goes, great. I mean, this is one size, this is a different size, how tall, how wide, how deep, and the girl's like, well, I've never had anybody complain about this before. And, she's kind of pushing back, and he goes, let me show you what you need. He pulls open your drawings. He goes, see, these guys are real designers. Pulls up. He goes, see that fireplace? I know how tall it is. I know how wide it is. I know. Yeah. And so he's done that on more than one occasion, because he's got access, to drawings from projects that he's done with us. And he kind of uses it as like a little, this is how it's done right.
Well, we're happy to be the standard. That's pretty awesome. I'll let Jeff know.
So.
No. Yeah, those details matter, and it's great to be able to provide those, because ultimately, selfishly, we get what we want. Yeah. We don't want to be surprised either that they didn't get our vision from a picture, So selfishly, we want the details noted so that we get them.
Well, I think one of the things I always tell clients is I feel like you guys are very malleable from a standpoint. If I call you up and we're running into an issue or we've got a problem, you guys are always open to making a modification, making an adjustment. Obviously, that doesn't take away from the design, but if we have to pivot and make small changes, because things in the field might be a little bit different, they might measure a little bit different. And I think that's another, strength that you guys have, where some designers are kind of like, no, it's my way or the highway.
Yeah, no, I feel like we're team players, and it takes a team to build this and to create this for these clients. And at the end of the day, we want them to feel confident in their team and know that we are working with the team. There's no ego here. Yeah. And honestly, we really don't play like that. It's not about that. It's creating the best home for these guys and having it be as easy as possible. They've paid for our services, they've paid for yours. And let's allow them to have that value and create and deliver for them.
Give them what they want.
Yeah.
Well, Johnna, it's been a tremendous experience. You are an incredible woman. You're an incredible designer. I love working with you and Jeff. I think, clients that have the opportunity to work with you, I think they're very fortunate. And we feel very fortunate to have you on the podcast today and share some of your insights with us and how you've kind of got to where you're at today with J Studios. And we're super excited to work with you throughout 2025. And we'll be sure to add some footage to some different social channels of some projects that we're doing together. And we
Awesome.
love working with you guys, and thanks for coming out.
Well, we feel the same. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely.